So for today, as kind of a fun video, I thought I would do a top 5 list on, in my opinion, the 5 rare slash oddball nano fish for a 5 to 10 gallon freshwater aquarium. So these fish are either just not commonly seen, like even sometimes at an LFS, you might not see these that often, or they just look pretty weird. But some of these you can even cohabitate in something like a 10 gallon on the broader side of the spectrum in this instance, which I'll talk about in a bit when I get to the list. But before I get into the actual list, I just want to say that this is not a care guide for any of the fish, and if you are interested in any of the fish on this list, please do your research before buying them so you can make sure you can accommodate their needs, since some of the fish on this list do have a couple special needs that might be difficult for some people, so just keep that in mind. So at number 5, I have the whole family of licorice gouramis, which belong to the genus Parospromenus, which is what I'll leave on the screen if you want to try and sort some of these out. But for some reason, a lot more recently, a lot more species have been popping up on like online stores or some local fish stores. Like I like to use the Wet Spot, for instance, and actually at the time of this recording, they have 6 different species in right now, which I'll leave a picture of some of the species names that they have on the list right now. But the reason I'm including these guys is within some of the species, they have some of the most interesting behavior you'll see out of any freshwater fish. But throughout the whole genus I've seen, they have some of the most striking colors out of any fish. Different colors and patterns you'll see within species, it stays pretty consistent. Most of them have some reds, blues, whites, kind of lighter browns, darker browns, things like that. But it's within a different pattern because this helps them camouflage in the wild. These guys do come from Asian streams and rivers and streams in Asia, where it's generally low flow, really kind of stained with tannins, lots of branches, leaves, really soft water, low pH, things like that. But the one thing that is different between each species I've seen so far is the fin flare. So these do belong with the same family as other gouramis, bettas, paradise fish, things like that. So they belong in that is it embanthoid? Yes, embanthoids, which are fish that can actually breathe air. So they belong within that group. And like I just mentioned, just like bettas, they can flare up those fins, and especially when they're in breeding mode, like if you have them with a female, for example, if you have like a pair of them, then most of the time you will see the male extremely flared up, and that is where a lot of the pictures you see online of them look like and come from, which I guess that's generally with most fish you see. But for a couple care facts, you can actually keep a pair, from what I've heard, throughout the whole genus, or just for each species, you can keep a pair of them in a 5-gallon tank, which is extremely awesome because they'll stay usually at that 1.2 to 1.5 inch mark, which is really awesome as well. And like I mentioned earlier, keeping a pair of them will always have the male flaring up and trying to show off to the female, which is where you'll get those really intense colors and patterns coming out. One special tip I do have for these guys, and I will include a special tip, which is like just a special care requirement you should be noticed about, or just like a little heads up about the fish, is all the species I've seen so far are wild caught. So it really is a good idea to replicate the natural habitat, which I will leave up the location they come from. I can't remember exactly, but it's best to keep it low flow, really soft water, like low pH and things like that. So if you do live with a place that has harder water, I really suggest using things like a catapa leaves and some other tannin and botanical things that will help bring the water hardness to a softer level for them. And that actually will help either way, because they do like black water, since it helps them camouflage better and feel more comfortable, since they are known to be a more of a cryptic fish. So keeping them with a lot of like catapa leaves, botanicals like I mentioned earlier, as well as a lot of driftwood, and keeping it heavily planted, so you have like different floating plants and things like that, that'll really make them more comfortable and you'll see them a lot more often. But as long as you really get those things down, they are a super excellent fish to have, and in the near future you'll probably see a couple species on the channel, since they are a fish that I've been wanting for a super long time. So the next fish I have on the list is the dwarf anchor catfish, also known as the mini Asian stone catfish. Now these guys seem to have built for the nano tank lifestyle, only topping out about an inch to 1.2 inches, and being quite shy, I've heard, are really one of the perfect bottom dwelling nano fish as well. Now they do live up to their name. If you look at them from the top down, they do look like mini anchors. But what is so great about them is that with the previously mentioned licorice gouramis and probably the next 2-3 fish on this list, no, I'm sorry, the next 2 fish on this list, they make perfect combos in something like a 10-gallon tank. Because a lot of the fish I'll be talking about next are more mid to top dwellers, and the anchor cats are like a catfish, bottom dwellers. So you have your, let's say, a pair of licorice gouramis in the top, or a small group of some of the other fish I'm going to be talking about next, and then you have a small group of the dwarf anchor cats on the bottom, helping clean up all the uneaten food and stuff like that. So for some other quick care facts on the anchor catfish, the minimum tank size some sites recommend is 3 gallons for a small group, but honestly I like to see them more in a 5-gallon since they'll have more room to roam around and scavenge. But in something like a 5-gallon, you can still have a group of, like, let's say 3 or 4, I believe, since their bioload really isn't that much, and again, they're only going to top out about that 1 inch to 1.2 inch mark. Just like the licorice gouramis, they do like a pretty low flow setup, so that makes another good point on why they are an excellent pair together. And they are super peaceful. Apparently they won't eat let's say like dwarf shrimp like the neocaridina's or guppy fry or things like that. They might eat dwarf shrimp babies, but that's something I'm not 100% sure on, so that might be something you might look out for. It doesn't really matter if you have these guys in a blackwater setup or not, although I would think the blackwater setup might encourage them to come out a little more since they are pretty reclusive, which is why you really want to have them in something with a lot of hiding spots or heavily planted, preferably a mix of both since they do like really clean water. And again, having a group of them will encourage them to come out more since they are schooling fish, and actually keeping them with the more going fish, let's say like one of the next fish I'm talking about, a small group of them, and then these of course will make a good pairing because the other fish I'm going to talk about is a lot more outgoing than the stone catfish. So, and they have something in a bigger tank like a 20-gallon long, and just something like some smaller tetras that are more outgoing as well. That'll tell the catfish that there's nothing that's going to hurt them or eat them, and it's safe to come out. So keeping them with other fish is actually a pretty good idea. I don't really have a special tip for these guys. Like other catfish, they are nocturnal, so you'll most likely see them when the lights go out, although again, having more hiding spots will encourage them to come out during the daytime as well. But one downside I do have with them is that they are wild caught, which is also why they're not commonly seen. But when you do see them, it's not very surprising that you'll see them go for about $9 to $12 a piece. And since they are a schooling fish, you'll want to have them in groups of at least 3 or more. So they are kind of spendy, but as long as you make sure you have the proper care for these guys, they will make a fantastic bottom dwelling fish for your nano aquarium. Next up on the list, I have, these are 2 fish, but they are from the same family. These are actually the toothpick fish. And no, they're not the kangaroo fish from the Amazon that are known to on one of Aquarium Co-op's most recent unboxing video, and this is the Endostomus toothpick fish group. So far I've only seen 2 species, Endostomus crocodilius, or the crocodile toothpick fish, and Endostomus paradoxus, or the paradox toothpick fish, I think is what it goes by as well. Now I'm going to group both of these into just one category, since I don't think care for them differs between both species. I have cared for the paradox toothpick fish before, so I do have knowledge on them, which I would think would also carry over to the crocodile toothpick fish, but I would just do your research as well between the 2 species just to make sure. Being extremely awesome fish, as well as only topping about at that 1.2 inch to 1.5 inch mark, They make some super awesome nano fish if you're looking for something that's out of the ordinary and that's not commonly seen in the hobby. Now, the reason they do look like this is they do belong to the stickleback family, but, which I'll talk about in a bit, they also are closely related to pipefish, which does explain their diet, which I'll talk about shortly. But just for some cool facts on these guys, they aren't the most active swimmers. When I was keeping some of the Paradox's toothpick fish, I would notice that they would just kind of hover in one spot and then just slowly cruise around the tank. So pretty inactive fish, which also helps to why they're good for nano aquariums. And they are relatively invertebrate safe with dwarf shrimp like Neocaridina and Caridina shrimp. And the reason I say it relatively is because, like the anchor catfish, they will actually, I don't know, the anchor catfish is a maybe, but the toothpick fish is a must. I mean, not a must, definite, as in they will definitely eat shrimp babies if they can find them and if they're hungry enough. Because I actually saw one of them eat a red crystal shrimp baby right in front of my own eyes. And I don't have footage of it, but that's just kind of a little heads up. But other than that, they're super peaceful with other fish, sort of cryptic, which is why having a group of them is really beneficial. And just something that looks like really out of the ordinary. Now for some quick care facts. They can actually go down to maybe a 3 gallon. I would say more of a 4 gallon. 4 gallon for a group of 3 sounds really reasonable. I had 4 in a 6 gallon and they did perfectly fine in there. Low flow is a good idea, so something like a sponge filter on a lower setting, since they are not the strongest swimmers in the world. And having a group of them, which means 3 at the least or more, is a good idea, since like the anchor catfish, they will be more comfortable that way. And having lots of hiding spots like branches work really well, and then just like heavily planted tanks like a Vallisneria would work really well. Like a field of Vallisneria would be really awesome, since they can hide in that and sort of blend in with the Vallisneria. Having them in a blackwater tank would be pretty awesome, and I think it would work more in towards their favor, as you know, their colors are a representation of their camouflage, since they do come from Asian rivers or streams and rivers in Asia, like the last 2 actually do as well. So this helps them blend in with their environment. And while you can successfully keep them without blackwater, I did as well, if you are willing to go for it, it will greatly help them. Now, one thing I do have about them is okay, so I'm bringing this back up. Just like pipefish, they do have some extremely tiny mouths. So you do want to feed them a lot of micro foods like live baby brine shrimp, frozen cyclops, frozen baby brine shrimp, aquarium co-op fry food works really well as well. So just a lot of that really fine stuff like that. Mostly going to make sure that they are getting something, since they can't really eat your normal frozen brine shrimp or frozen bloodworms and stuff like that, since their mouths are just too small. But a good thing about them is their price is not bad, actually. Most of the times I've seen them for sale, they were going for about $4 to I think $8 a fish, which is honestly quite cheap for a fish like them that is not commonly seen and is a schooling fish as well. Well, not schooling, more like a shoaling fish. But that's really good, since you are trying to get a group, so you won't have to pay big bucks for a group of them. The next fish I'm going to talk about on the list is another one that you've probably seen on one of Aquarium Co-op's most recent unboxing videos as well, and it's another fish that I have personally kept in one of my tanks. This is Gobiopterus chano, or the schooling glass dwarf goby. These guys fit both categories, as they're a little bit hard to find, but they're also extremely odd and cool looking. Unlike other goby species that we see in freshwater, they actually like lower to medium flow, as they don't have high oxygen requirements, or they don't come really from like really fast moving streams as other gobies do, like the Styphodon genus or some other species do that we see commonly in the hobby. And they also don't perch, because they, like their name, are actually mid-level swimmers, and they do like to school with each other. One thing I did notice with these guys is that some of them actually have a red dot, kind of where I guess you would expect a fish's heart to be. So kind of a little more towards the left of their chest if you're looking at them from the side. And I only noticed this in a couple of them, and some of them I didn't notice at all. So I'm not sure if that has been solved yet, but my guess is it might be a sexual dimorphism thing, which means there is a noticeable difference between a male and a female. So it could be that, but I'm not 100% sure. I think when watching Aquarium Co-op's video, Robert said that he noticed the red dot in all the fish. So I think for right now, it is really just a mystery to what that red dot is and if it means anything at all. So onto some quick care facts about these guys. You can have a small school in a 10 gallon. I would say probably 6 to 7 of these in a 10 gallon, since they do only reach about 1.5 inches. And from what I've seen, they are more kind of like a hovering fish, which means that they just kind of stay in one spot, just kind of hover there. Like if you've seen the glass catfish, they're kind of like that, except a bit more active, but still have kind of that, like, they're just gonna stay in kind of one spot for a while activity. And in my experience as well, they are more cryptic-ish fish, so having a lot of planes will help them greatly. And this is also another good candidate for a black water aquarium, since they do come from streams and rivers in Asia. I think every fish in here does come from a part in Asia. I just realized that, but this will help them feel more comfortable, and you'll see them actually a lot better in a black water environment, since when I was keeping mine in my old Asian river biotope, I noticed that their colors, because, well, I wouldn't say colors, but their body just got a lot more clearer, because, and when I mean clearer, I mean like they just got really bold and weren't as shy as they were before. But yeah, like the toothpick fish, the anchor cats, and actually it's really just those two, but like those two, you don't have to keep them in black water, but I would think they would feel more comfortable. They are super peaceful and would theoretically get along with dwarf shrimp. I haven't had any cohabitate with dwarf shrimp, so I can't tell for sure, but the reason I think they would be compatible is going to carry over to my one tip I have, and that is, they like the toothpick fish, they also have some really small mouths, so you want to feed them a lot of microfoods. They can scarf down a couple bloodworms if they are small enough, I've seen, but to make sure they do get some food, I would feed stuff like I mentioned before for the toothpick fish, like live baby brine shrimp, frozen baby brine, frozen cyclops, things like that. Price wise, they are super cheap. I think I got mine from the wet spot for about $3.50, which is really awesome. Since, like I mentioned with the toothpick fish, they are schooling fish. Well, these guys are more, actually they're more shoalers than schooling, since they'll kind of stay together, but not like really tight like a group of rummy nosed tetras would. But you do want to have, for these guys, I would say you want to have at least 6, just because they are more willing to come out if you do have more of them, like a lot of other schooling fish. But I just appreciate having more of them around. But for the price, usually you'll see them for about $4 to $6, I would say. So it's not going to be really expensive to get a group of them. But all in all, these are one fish that I would really like to keep again. And I do have an awesome idea for a black water setup consisting of pretty much all the species I'll be talking about on this list, except for probably the next one, and I'll explain why in a little bit. So for the final fish on this list, this is actually a late swap off, since I was originally going to talk about the true freshwater bumblebee goby, which is Brachygobius xanthomelas, and I'll still leave them as kind of like a bonus fish. I'll put their scientific name up on the screen right now, since those are pretty cool, as they are a true freshwater bumblebee goby, because all the other species that we know of right now do live in brackish water, but these guys can live their whole life in freshwater. I believe actually if they go in brackish water, they don't do well, so they're more suitable for like a nano predator for a freshwater aquarium if you're looking for them. They can get a little bit territorial with each other, especially males, and they might also nip at long-finned fish, so you really don't want to put them with anything that has really long traily fins. And they also have kind of a hard time eating, since they are picky eaters, I've heard. So this is just a honorable mention, since I thought they were pretty cool. And yeah, you should definitely do research if you're interested in these. But the reason I'm swapping those out is because I completely forgot about this fish until I was scrolling through Instagram and I saw them. And taking my number 1 spot is the neon green Rasbora, or otherwise known as the green Kubotai Rasbora. So these fish are super awesome. I haven't had them myself. I've always wanted to, but whenever I go to Aquarium Co-op, because I do live in Washington, I'm about an hour away from them, they always strike me as this really awesome fish, because the tank they have them in is in a with a black background, so the colors stand out extremely well. And an added bonus with these guys is they are naturally this really vibrant lime green. So in the freshwater side of the hobby, finding a naturally green fish, something that's not like a glowfish or a glow shark or the other glow things, is honestly pretty hard. You will find a lot of fish that have small hints of green, like there's endlers, guppies, some cichlids have hints of green as well, and some other fish that do have that. But to find a fish that is naturally this vibrant of a green color is really uncommon. And speaking of uncommon, these guys themselves are also pretty uncommon to find. So you'll most likely have to go to an LFS and probably have to order them, like special order them. A few online stores to have them, like Wetspot has them. Aquatic Arts actually has them captive bred, they say, so that's really awesome as well. But if you were to do a tandem setup, this is one fish along with the licorice gouramis I would highly recommend you do a tandem setup for. So I don't currently have a video on how to do a stained or tandem aquarium on the channel, but that will be something for the future, because they do come from slow moving streams and blackwater streams in Thailand. So you can make really great tank mates with some other fish on this list, like the anchor catfish would probably work really well, and then some species of licorice gourami if you give both of them enough space, because I do know that the licorice gouramis do like to have their own little space, and then the Rasboras just will take up everything else. But also the tannins do help bring out an even more vibrant green than what you see in person, because in person when they're at a store, they're most likely going to be stressed out, kind of looking like a super light green. And I can throw up a small clip of Serpa Design, because Tanner, a while ago, he got some of the green Rasboras, and you can see in the container that they're really washed out and stressed, and that's most likely what you'll see once you get them in, or if you're looking at them from a store. But once you get them settled in an aquarium, again, even better if it's a tannin or a blackwater tank with other peaceful fish and they have a lot of swimming space, then they really turn into this electric lime fish that a lot of people are attracted to, including me, because again, it's a naturally green fish. And what's even better is what I'll go over in the quick care stats right now. So minimum tank size you want to have for these guys is 10 gallons. So they just kind of barely make the cut. You can't actually have a small school of these in a 10 gallon. I would say maybe 6 to 8 of them in a 10 gallon works really well. And since they are schooling fish, you do actually want to have them in groups of 6 or more. But I think these possibly might be the smallest fish on the list, only topping out about 0.75 inches. The licorice gouramis get between 1.1 and 1.3. The anchor cat's at 1.1. The toothpick fish, I think, about 1.1 and 1.2. And I forgot the fish we just talked about. Oh yeah, the glass gobies. Those guys get around 1.3 to 1.75. So yeah, they are actually the smallest fish on this list. But just because it's small does not mean that it's hard. These guys are actually super easy to take care of, again, as long as you have a comfortable environment for them. They are super easy to feed. They can take dried foods, frozen foods, live foods. They won't pick at any invertebrates, especially dwarf shrimp. Again, they can stand at small tank size, about 10 gallons. Personally, if you're keeping them long term, I would maybe do 15-20 gallons. But if it's just a group of them, and let's say like some small pygmy cories of some species, or like the dwarf anchor cats, then they're fine for their whole lives in a 10 gallon. And the price range for them is really reasonable as well. Most likely you'll see them going for $4 to $6 a piece, which is really awesome, since you do want to have a decently sized group of them, because that makes them feel more comfortable, more outgoing, and if they feel more comfortable, they'll show more colors. So yeah, all in all, the green Kubotai Rasbora, or the green neon Rasbora, is a super awesome fish, which is why they are number one in my opinion for this list, since they're easy to feed, easy to take care of, pretty hardy, don't cost a lot, can go in 10 tanks as small as 10 gallons, and have some extremely unique colors you don't see in other fish. Yeah, this was my top 5 list of rare / oddball nano fish for a freshwater aquarium between 5 to 10 gallons. I'm sorry the video was a little lengthy, but a lot of these fish on this list are, actually all the fish on this list are some of my personal favorites, and I really like to keep either some of them again or try my hands out at the ones that I've never kept before. And fun fact, I will actually be doing a blackwater build really soon, and 3 of the 5 fish on this list are actually going into that tank. So you can leave your guesses in the comments below. And if you're new here and you did enjoy the video, please consider subscribing, liking the video, and sharing it around. And again, this was not a care guide for any of the fish. I just gave off some quick stats. So if you are interested in any of the species of fish, please do your research, as some of these fish do have some specific needs. Like the toothpick fish, they only eat small foods, mainly live foods, but they can be trained on the frozen. And then the licorice gouramis really like a blackwater / tanned tank. So again, I really hope everyone enjoyed this video. There will most likely be another one up this weekend, but I'm really excited for what's to come this summer and showing off how to do a tannin, or it's also called a stain or blackwater build, really soon on the channel. So with that being it, my name is Northwest Fishkeeping, signing out.